think doesn't compare to anything before. This is the biggest lesson of my life, the biggest learning moment.
Stop what you're doing right now. A shocking claim is spreading fast that Victor Wembanyama has asked for a trade to the New York Knicks. If that turns out to be true, it would be one of the biggest NBA stories in years. Almost nobody saw this rumor coming, the idea of leaving San Antonio for the same team that just beat the Spurs in the NBA Finals has fans completely stunned. The basketball world has gone wild over the speculation. Social media is exploding, group chats are non-stop, and even people who barely followed the season suddenly have something to say. Some believe there could be real tension behind the scenes, while others think the whole thing is being blown way out of proportion. Either way, this story is getting everyone's attention, and it is not fading away anytime soon. What we're about to break down could completely change the way you look at Wembanyama, the Spurs, and everything that may have been happening behind the scenes after the finals ended. There are details that many people have missed, and when you connect the dots, some of the moves made by both organizations start to raise serious questions. Whether this rumor has real weight or not, there is a lot to unpack. Let's break it all down. If you'd like, I can also make the next chunk match this same high-retention YouTube style. Here's what you need to understand right away, because this story has way more layers than most people are talking about. Once the Knicks finished off the Spurs in 5 games and the championship celebration began, the basketball world completely exploded. Social media was flooded with reactions, bold theories, and non-stop debate as fans tried to figure out what could happen next. Just hours after the final buzzer, Victor Wembanyama's name started showing up in trade rumors connected to New York. The speculation spread at lightning speed, and many fans acted like something huge was already happening. Posts were everywhere, videos were pulling in massive numbers, and every new rumor seemed to make the conversation even bigger. Whether the reports had real backing or not, people could not stop talking about them. The comment sections on every major basketball page turned into all-out battles. Fans, former players, creators, and even people who had barely followed the NBA all season suddenly jumped into the discussion with strong opinions. The buzz reached a level where every move by the Spurs and Knicks was being picked apart, and that kind of attention says a lot about how important Wembanyama has become in today's NBA conversation. But while everyone was focused on the internet drama, something else was happening behind the scenes. The actual moves made by both organizations in the days and weeks after the finals painted a very different picture from what social media kept pushing. That huge gap between online speculation and the available facts is exactly why this story deserves a much closer look. But to really understand why this story blew up the way it did, we have to go back to where everything started. The timeline matters much more than most people realize, and every step helps explain why this rumor spread so fast. It all goes back to the 2026 NBA Finals, when the New York Knicks defeated the San Antonio Spurs in 5 games to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy. It was not a one-sided series from start to finish. San Antonio had some strong moments, and there were times when it looked like the Spurs might grab another win and make things much more interesting. But when the series ended, the result was still the same. The Spurs came up short in 5 games, and that defeat quickly became a major talking point around Victor Wembanyama. As one of the league's brightest young stars, plenty of fans immediately started wondering what this loss could mean for the future. Then social media did what it always does after a superstar falls short on the biggest stage. It went into overdrive. One viral post compared Wembanyama's situation to other NBA stars who faced tough playoff losses early in their careers before eventually changing teams. Another creator shared a dramatic highlight video that pushed a similar idea, and it spread across basketball pages at an incredible pace. Before long, the comment sections were completely out of control. What started as fan theories slowly turned into a massive online debate, with one question taking over the entire conversation. Should Victor Wembanyama stay with the Spurs, or would he be better off somewhere else after that finals loss? This is where the story takes an interesting turn because what many people were saying online was very different from what was actually happening around both organizations. While social media was busy pushing trade theories and wild predictions, the Knicks were making moves that told a completely different story. Let's look at what New York actually did after winning the championship, because this part of the story barely got any attention during all the online buzz. Instead of chasing another superstar, the Knicks focused on building around the group that had already brought them a title. With an experienced core and a front office that understood how hard it is to stay on top, they appeared more interested in protecting their championship window than making a flashy move. That approach showed up again during the 2026 NBA Draft. With the 39th overall pick, New York selected Jack Kyle, a combo guard who developed his game in Germany and earned a strong reputation across European basketball for his high basketball IQ and smart decision-making. He was not the type of draft pick that filled highlight reels or dominated social media, but many viewed him as a player who could quietly strengthen an already successful roster. Jack Kyle was seen as a long-term investment, not just another draft pick. His calm decision-making, ability to play multiple guard positions, strong defensive effort, and team-first style made him the kind of player who could fit into an established system without forcing the Knicks to change the way they played. New York appeared focused on developing him into a reliable rotation player while keeping its salary structure flexible and its championship core together. That mindset says a lot about how the Knicks were approaching the offseason. It looked like an organization that knew exactly where it stood and what it needed to stay among the NBA's best. Then with the 47th overall pick, New York selected Tyler Nick, a talented outside shooter whose biggest strengths were floor spacing and adding depth off the bench. For a team fresh off a championship, bringing in another affordable shooter was the type of smart move that could help keep its title window open for years to come. When you put both draft picks together, they tell the same story. The Knicks did not appear to be tearing apart their roster or clearing space for a blockbuster move. Instead, they were adding depth, developing young talent, and thinking about the future. But this is where the story suddenly gets much more interesting, because San Antonio's response after losing the finals caught many people by surprise and looked very different from what fans online had been expecting. What the Spurs did in the weeks after the championship loss did not look like the actions of a team preparing to lose its biggest star. There were no obvious signs from the front office that suggested panic or uncertainty, and nothing publicly pointed to Victor Wembanyama wanting a different future. Instead of standing still, San Antonio continued making moves that showed confidence in the direction of the team. There was no draft night approach that hinted the Spurs were waiting for a major decision before building their roster. Based on their public moves, the organization appeared focused on improving the team and moving forward. Looking back, the 2026 NBA Draft became one of the clearest examples of how committed San Antonio seemed to be to its long-term plan after the finals. With the 20th overall pick, the Spurs selected Jaden Quaintance, and that choice deserves much more attention than it received at the time. Quaintance is a powerful, high-energy forward known for his aggressive defense, physical style, and ability to protect the paint. Those were exactly the areas where San Antonio struggled during the finals against New York, making the selection look like a direct effort to strengthen one of the team's biggest weaknesses rather than the move of a franchise expecting major changes at the top. Throughout that final series, San Antonio struggled in some of the most physical battles on the court. The Spurs were pushed around in key moments where toughness, positioning, and winning battles in the paint made all the difference. Too often, Victor Wembanyama had to carry a heavy load on both ends of the floor, and over the course of a long playoff run, that kind of responsibility can wear down even the best players. That is exactly why the Jaden Quaintance pick stood out. His physical style, defensive intensity, and willingness to battle inside give the Spurs another player who can handle those demanding matchups that could allow Wembanyama to save more energy for the moments where his unique skills can have the biggest impact instead of asking him to do everything himself. It looked like a move designed to make the entire team stronger, not just one player. That is the kind of roster building successful teams aim for. San Antonio appeared to identify a clear weakness and use the draft to address it directly. But the move that really grabbed attention came just a few picks later. The Spurs traded back into the first round to select Tyrese Reed Jr., and that decision gave fans even more reason to believe the organization was fully committed to building around its young core for the future. With the 26th overall pick, that trade back into the first round may have been one of the strongest signals of what San Antonio was trying to accomplish all offseason. Instead of making splashy moves, the Spurs doubled down on strengthening the roster around their young core. Tyrese Reed Jr. brought rebounding, rim protection, physical defense, and the kind of toughness around the basket that often decides close playoff games, even if those plays never show up in the biggest highlights. Many draft analysts and scouts pointed to the Reed selection as a direct response to the problems San Antonio faced against New York in the finals. The Spurs appeared to study those 5 games closely and recognize where they needed more size, strength, and interior depth. Reed's skill set matched those needs almost perfectly, making him a logical addition to the roster. The message behind that move seemed pretty clear. San Antonio looked focused on fixing the weaknesses that were exposed during the championship series instead of starting over. Rather than chasing headlines, the front office appeared committed to improving the team with practical moves that address specific problems. When you look at Jaden Quaintance and Tyrese Reed Jr. together, the overall strategy becomes much easier to understand. The Spurs did not appear to be preparing for a massive roster shakeup or signaling that a franchise-changing move was around the corner. Instead, they invested valuable draft assets into strengthening the foundation they already had and continuing to build a team that could better support Victor Wembanyama as the franchise moved forward. One thing that many people missed during all the trade rumors was what San Antonio's draft strategy actually suggested. Teams usually do not spend valuable draft picks solving specific roster problems if they believe their franchise player is already looking for the exit. Instead, the Spurs' moves appeared to show an organization focused on building around Victor Wembanyama and strengthening the team for the future. Every draft decision seemed aimed at making the roster a better fit around its young superstar rather than preparing for life without him. Now let's look at the bigger picture, because the conversation that followed the 2026 finals became about much more than trade speculation. Once the first wave of viral posts slowed down, fans started having bigger discussions about what Wembanyama's career should look like and which path would give him the best chance to compete for championships. That debate quickly spread across basketball media and social platforms, keeping the story alive long after the finals ended. Not every opinion was just internet noise either. Some fans raised thoughtful points that were worth discussing. One of the biggest arguments focused on team building. Supporters of that view pointed to how the Knicks had surrounded their own franchise stars with a deep, balanced roster and created a strong organizational foundation that helped deliver a championship. From that perspective, some believed a player as talented as Wembanyama would benefit from having that same level of support as quickly as possible, while others argued San Antonio was already taking meaningful steps to build exactly that over time. Another argument quickly gained momentum. Some fans claimed that in today's NBA, where championships and finals appearances often shape a player's legacy, joining an already proven contender can seem like the smarter career move instead of waiting for a young team to develop into a title favorite. That idea sparked even more debate across the basketball world. Then came the endless comparisons to NBA history. Social media filled up with posts pointing to superstar players who eventually left the teams that drafted them before finding championship success somewhere else. For fans who believe the rumors or like the idea of a blockbuster move, Those examples seem to fit the story perfectly and made the speculation feel even more convincing. But there was one major piece of context that many of those conversations overlooked. Reaching the NBA Finals with a young roster that is still developing is not automatically a sign that a team has reached its limit. In many cases, it can be a sign that the foundation is already strong and that the organization is moving in the right direction. Instead of proving that something was broken, the finals run could just as easily be seen as evidence that the plan was working. It showed that the team's core was capable of competing on the biggest stage and that the path to a championship might be closer than many people realized. From that point of view, San Antonio's loss did not necessarily point to a flawed foundation. It simply highlighted the areas that still needed to improve. The Spurs did not fall short simply because they lacked talent. New York had a more complete roster, more championship experience, and delivered when every possession mattered most. That difference was real, but it is also the kind of gap that teams can close through smart drafting, steady player development, and patience instead of rushing into dramatic changes. San Antonio's draft strategy seemed to reflect exactly that mindset. Rather than making desperate moves, the organization appeared focused on strengthening the roster piece by piece and addressing the specific weaknesses exposed during the finals. That approach suggested the Spurs believed they were building towards something bigger instead of starting over. There is another part of this conversation that often gets overlooked, and it has everything to do with Victor Wembanyama's development. As incredible as he already is, he is still early in his NBA career. That may sound surprising considering the things he has already accomplished on the court, but even the greatest players continue to improve as they gain more experience. The legends of the game did not become complete players overnight. They expanded their skills, became more efficient, made quicker decisions, and learned how to take over the biggest moments when championships were on the line. That kind of growth takes time, stability, and the right environment. From that perspective, continuing to build around Wembanyama could be just as important as adding new talent, giving him the opportunity to grow within a system designed to help him reach his full potential. San Antonio appears to have many of the pieces needed to help Victor Wembanyama continue developing. The organization has an established coaching staff, a long-term approach to player development, and an off-season plan that focused on improving the roster around its young core. Simply placing Wembanyama on a championship team with a completely different identity would not automatically solve the issues the Spurs faced in the 2026 finals. In many ways, continuing to grow in a system built around his strengths could be just as valuable for his long-term future. This is also where the conversation becomes much bigger than just one player. What happened online after the 2026 finals is something basketball fans have seen many times before. Whenever a superstar comes up short on the biggest stage, social media often follows the same pattern, and the discussion can become more dramatic with every passing day. First comes the loss, then the endless debate about what went wrong. Soon after, the organization starts getting questioned, and before long, trade rumors begin spreading across every major basketball page. As those stories get shared over and over again, they can start to feel like established facts, even when they originally came from fan speculation or unverified posts that were never confirmed. That is why it is so important to separate viral conversations from information that has actually been backed up by reliable reporting. The NBA is almost built for stories like this. More than any other major team sport, basketball is driven by superstar players, and one player's future can completely change the direction of an entire franchise. That is why fans across the league pay so much attention whenever a big name becomes connected to trade rumors, even if those rumors are based only on speculation. Basketball history has shown just how much impact those decisions can have. When LeBron James changed teams, the balance of power across the league shifted for years. When Kevin Durant made his move, the debate around it lasted long after the headlines faded. Those moments changed the way fans and social media react whenever another superstar faces a difficult playoff loss, making many people expect a similar story every time. Because of that, the same pattern often repeats itself, even when the situations are very different. As soon as a superstar falls short, many people begin looking for signs that a trade could be next, whether the available facts support that idea or not. Sometimes the online conversation moves much faster than the actual evidence. That is what makes the Wembanyama situation stand out. Following the finals, there were no public signs that San Antonio was shifting away from its franchise centerpiece. Instead, the Spurs continued making moves that appeared focused on strengthening the roster, improving key areas, and building a team that could compete at an even higher level in the seasons ahead. The trade rumor did not stay convincing for very long, and there was a simple reason why. It was not because fans suddenly lost interest in Victor Wembanyama. It was because the available evidence kept pointing in a different direction. While the rumors continued online, San Antonio's actual moves suggested the organization was focused on building around its young superstar rather than preparing to move on from him. Think about the draft for a moment. A team expecting to lose its franchise player usually does not trade back into the first round to add front-court depth that can help support that same player. Instead, the Spurs used valuable draft assets to strengthen areas that had been exposed during the finals. Move after move seemed to fit one clear plan: improve the roster, support the core, and continue building for the future with Wembanyama as a central piece. There is also another interesting question that deserves attention. Why did so much of the speculation focus on New York instead of another team? That is not a random detail, and it helps explain why the story spread so quickly. The Knicks remain one of the most famous franchises in basketball. Madison Square Garden has a reputation that few arenas can match, and players often describe the experience of competing there as something special. The history, the passionate fans, and the spotlight that comes with playing in New York naturally make the team a popular destination whenever blockbuster rumors begin making the rounds. The idea of a generational talent playing at Madison Square Garden for the New York Knicks is the kind of story that grabs attention instantly. It sounds like something straight out of a movie, and that alone makes it incredibly easy for fans to imagine. Before anything is confirmed, people are already creating highlight edits, mock graphics, and dream scenarios that make the idea feel bigger than reality. The timing made the rumors even more exciting. Since the Knicks had just won the championship, many fans saw New York as the perfect destination in their fantasy trade ideas. Instead of imagining Wembanyama joining another rebuilding team, they pictured him stepping onto a proven contender with championship momentum already in place. That combination of New York's history, its passionate fan base, and the excitement of adding a young superstar helped those rumors spread at an incredible speed. Of course, none of that changes the actual facts behind the situation, but it does help explain why this particular rumor exploded while so many other trade ideas barely received any attention. The connection between a rising superstar and one of the NBA's biggest franchises created the kind of headline that social media loves to share, discuss, and debate over and over again. Another reason the conversation became so intense was the way the finals were talked about after the series ended. The Knicks were not only praised for winning the championship, but also for how they built their roster. Analysts, fans, and media personalities pointed to New York's depth, smart team building, and balanced lineup as an example of what a modern championship contender is supposed to look like, making every rumor connected to the team feel even bigger. With so much praise focused on the Knicks, it became easy for many people to start questioning whether San Antonio was truly ready to compete at that same level, not just in 2026, but for years to come. Once that discussion gained momentum, it did not take long before the conversation shifted toward Victor Wembanyama's future. On social media, that jump from criticizing a team's roster to imagining its biggest star leaving can happen almost overnight. That is exactly what happened here. Trade theories spread at an incredible pace, and the online debate became bigger with every new post, video, and comment. Even as more information became available, the rumors had already taken on a life of their own. By then, millions of fans had seen the story, shared their opinions, and kept the speculation alive across the basketball world. But when you step back and look at the full picture, the story becomes much clearer. There was never reliable reporting confirming that Wembanyama had requested a trade. Instead, the rumor appeared to grow from emotional reactions after a difficult finals loss, fueled by comparisons to past NBA superstars who eventually changed teams. Social media amplified those ideas at lightning speed, rewarding the most attention-grabbing stories whether they were verified or not. In the end, the rumor spread because it was exciting, not because it was supported by strong evidence. Fans have seen superstar moves reshape the NBA before, so it was easy for many to imagine history repeating itself. And when a player as talented and popular as Victor Wembanyama is involved, almost any rumor connected to his name is guaranteed to grab attention and spark huge conversations across the league. The gap between what many people wanted to believe online and what the available evidence suggested was huge. That left plenty of room for rumors, theories, and endless debates to grow for weeks. But once you look past all of that noise, the real off-season story becomes even more interesting because it shows where San Antonio appears to be heading and how the organization plans to respond after coming up short in the finals. Instead of overreacting to the loss, the Spurs appeared to take a careful look at exactly what went wrong. They seemed to identify the specific moments that made the difference, including the physical matchups they struggled with, the battles in the paint they could not consistently win, and the lack of front court depth that placed even more pressure on Victor Wembanyama during the series. Rather than ignoring those problems, they appeared determined to address them directly. That approach showed up clearly during the draft. Jaden Quaintance added size, physicality, and aggressive defense to help strengthen the front court when games become more demanding. Tyrus Reed Jr. brought rebounding, interior toughness, and added depth around the basket, giving the coaching staff more options throughout the rotation. Together, those moves looked like part of a focused plan to build a stronger team around Wembanyama and help reduce the heavy workload that often falls on a franchise player during a long playoff run. The Knicks also handled their offseason with a clear plan. Instead of making risky blockbuster moves, they added smart, affordable talent that could strengthen their depth for years to come. That is often how championship teams stay competitive, and New York's draft strategy appeared to reflect exactly that approach. At the same time, San Antonio focused on improving the areas that were exposed in the finals, with both teams making moves that matched where they currently stand. Right in the middle of all of this is Victor Wembanyama, and the 2026 finals may have shown that his team is closer to competing for a championship than many people expected before the season even began. That is easy to overlook when the conversation is dominated by trade rumors, but player development rarely happens overnight. Generational talents almost never follow a perfect timeline. Fans often expect championships immediately, even though many of the greatest players in NBA history needed time to grow after reaching the finals for the first time. They were already incredible, but those early defeats helped shape the complete players they eventually became. There is every reason to believe Wembanyama can continue following that same path as he gains more experience. Looking at his progress and the Spurs' response after the finals, the bigger picture seems much more important than the rumors. The organization appears focused on continuing to build around its young superstar rather than starting over. If that approach continues, the biggest moments in Wembanyama's career may still be ahead, and the story of his future could look very different from the speculation that spread across social media. From everything we've seen this offseason, the Spurs do not appear to be planning for life without Victor Wembanyama. Instead, they seem focused on building a stronger team around their franchise player and closing the gap between falling short in the finals and winning a championship. Every major move has pointed toward improving the roster, adding depth, and giving their young core a better chance to compete at the highest level. The next time San Antonio and New York meet on a stage this big, the matchup could look completely different. A lot can change over the course of an NBA season, and the Spurs clearly seem determined to learn from their finals loss. Rather than asking whether Wembanyama is leaving, the bigger question may be how quickly San Antonio can turn those lessons into another championship opportunity. Now it's your turn. Do you think the Spurs can make the right adjustments and eventually beat the Knicks? Or do you believe New York has built a team that will stay on top for years to come? Let everyone know your prediction in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest NBA stories, rumors, and analysis. And if you found this breakdown interesting, share it with another basketball fan. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.